Welcome to the Win, Make, Give Wealth Series. This is Ben Kinney, joined here with Chad Himes and Bob Stewart. Hi, guys.
Hey, Ben.
Hello.
We are excited to continue on our journey of the Wealth Series. Today, we're going to dive in to retirement planning.
Okay.
Knowing what we have to start doing now so that when we buy that RV and those pink flamingos that we put in front of our house and those weird gnome dolls that my grandma had and all the other weird stuff that our grandparents have done over the years, that we have an awesome retirement.
Awesome retirement. Sorry.
But before we go into the retirement planning workbook, which can be found at winmakegive.com/wealth or /resources. Download the workbooks and all the attachments to follow along, answer the questions to win prizes, cash, and have an awesome time.
Woo! He's getting excited.
Here's what I've learned after years of changing my own habits and working with other people, that you can make a lot of money at your job or in your business. You can drive a nice car. You can have a nice house, but it still doesn't mean that you have wealth or you have financial freedom. You can have a secure job. You can have a great credit score. You can pay your bills every month and still not have financial freedom, boys.
Yes.
We have 49% of the population making over $100,000 living paycheck to paycheck. So
Exactly. You can own a business where you have a ton of employees. You can make and sell a ton of widgets, still not have financial freedom. I have friends that own thousands of acres of land worth tens of millions of dollars, and yet they struggle to pay their taxes every single year. Financial freedom comes not from just having assets, not from just having income, but specifically from having assets that can create income. We call this, Chad, flipping the triangle.
Okay.
The concept we created. It's about moving from having normal income, job income,
Yep.
to having assets that create income.
Right. It's like eating pizza from the crust in instead of eating it the normal way.
Super weird analogy, but
Well,
I'm following you.
Yeah. Well, Bob and I were talking on a previous episode of the podcast how we use triangles. We use shapes that represent food, right? We're using slices of pizza. We're using cheeseburgers. Those are the things. When you draw your charts, you draw them from food. So as I'm looking at your triangle, I'm seeing a slice of pizza. And right now we're starting with working our way, going the other way on that piece of pizza.
So let's do that. Let's grab the workbook.
Okay.
It's going to have a triangle that looks like it's right side up.
Yep.
It looks like a pyramid,
Got it.
right?
Yep.
In the bottom of that pyramid is how the vast majority of the world lives. They live off normal income.
Yes.
So draw or write, spell normal income in the bottom of the triangle that looks like the Great Pyramids in
Yes.
Egypt.
The base of it would be normal income, which we talked about in the income episode if you need to go back for a refresher on what normal income is.
And with that normal income, we tend to buy things,
Yes.
save money,
Hopefully.
invest,
Really
Hopefully.
hopefully.
and hopefully at the end of the day, we have a little bit of assets left over.
Yes.
The value of our car, the value of the house we live in, the value of our savings account. We've all talked about the stats and the numbers that at the end of the day, for the vast majority of the population, that isn't enough.
Right.
This triangle represents why it's not enough. Because people exchange time for money, And when they have anything left over, they buy a little tiny bit of assets. So at the end of your life, or the end of your time building your business, or end of your years working for that job, you hope that you have some things worth something so that you can live on it. What we're asking you to do in the Wealth series is to flip the triangle. Look at the other triangle on the page that's upside down. And on the base of the upside down triangle, the wide side, I want you to write assets.
Okay.
You've went from the first triangle, having a small little piece of assets, to the other triangle where the base is filled with assets. Those assets, Chad, are cash, your stock accounts and your retirement accounts, the value of all the real estate that you own, the value of your businesses, all the different 8 classes of assets that we talked about earlier.
Sure.
They make up that.
Right.
Now, at the very bottom of this second triangle, normal income is smaller. Now, the reason that normal income is smaller is because there's a point in our life when we hope that we don't have to go to work every day.
Right.
We don't make income from our job anymore. It becomes a smaller and smaller piece of how we live.
Sure.
In fact, in the little piece down there, write normal income, and even write a 0 in there if you wanted, because the goal is over time that you could live off your assets when your normal income goes to 0.
What I want everyone to understand as you're following along, as Ben's describing this to you, you've drawn the triangle. Don't flip the triangle and take all the words with it. We're basically leaving the words where they were, and we're just flipping the image around the words. So the base, which was on normal income, now flips upside down. So assets is where that big base is.
The second triangle on the right, bottom, wherever you're looking at it, is basically how financially free people live. They rely on their assets to produce the income that they need to live.
Which was that passive income, as you talked about in the income episode.
Or the investment income by selling some stocks.
Because they're
or
getting
taking
to a point in
withdrawals.
life where they're going to start selling that stuff because they don't need it as much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's the deal.
I like deals.
The more we invest, the faster your triangle, your pyramid, is going to flip. And the easier it becomes to build more wealth and financial freedom year after year. There's a saying out there, Bob, called the rich get richer. It's actually true. It's 100% true. The more financially secure you get, the more opportunities open up for you and the more things you can do. If you have more cash, you could buy better properties. You could make better investments. You could take advantage when the stock market goes down. You could buy more. It's just a fact. So let me give you a very, very simple example of how somebody's triangle potentially flips.
Okay.
Let's say that we make the average income in America, which we figured out was at some point some number.
63,000?
Yeah, 63,214.
There you go. I love that Bob's got that.
Great. And then let's say that we might have a spouse, partner, whatever.
Yep.
And they make roughly the same.
Okay. Although the average household was 83,000, if I remember correctly. So interesting, when you do have 2 incomes in the house, usually one is that much greater than the other, or both of them have taken less.
But in this house, we both make the average.
But in this house,
126.
My dad said it's just as easy to fall in love with a rich girl as it is a poor one.
Got it. Okay.
Ladies, that same thing works for guys or for girls or guys to guys.
We need a book of Mike Kinney wisdom, by the way. Is that floating around?
A partner that's super rich.
That's a great strategy.
If you don't want to do the work that's in the Wealth series. Okay. Let's say we make $100,000 a year as a family.
Sure.
This is the Ben and Chad household.
Okay.
And we live together.
Yeah.
And we make $100,000.
Okay.
We're able to live, let's say, on 75% of our income, just like we talked about in the budget section.
Okay.
Which means we have $25,000 a year to pay off debt, save or invest.
Right.
Okay. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a big portion of that $25,000 and Chad and I are going to buy a house.
Yay.
We're going to put 5% down on a $400,000 house.
Okay.
20 grand. We're going to buy our first house. The next year, we're not going to buy a house, but we're still going to be making roughly 100,000.
Yep.
So that next 25,000 that we have to save, plus the 5,000 from the year before, maybe we're going to put it into our retirement account.
Okay.
So now in year 2, we have a $400,000 house that's appreciating by 4%, 10%, 20%, depending on the year, right?
Yep.
And we have our retirement accounts that are growing.
Yep.
So let's say at the end of year 3, we have 50,000 in assets. That's equity in our home and the value of our stock account.
Yep.
And that's probably low. That's at the start of year 3 because we had saved 25,000 the first year, which we put into our house.
Yep.
And 25,000 the second. So maybe on the third year we have 75,000.
Sure.
It's still a triangle because at the base we have 100,000 in normal income, and at the top we have
75,000 in this example. So the base is obviously still bigger than the top. Yep.
But by year 4 or year 5, the equity in our home and the value of our stock accounts is probably 150. And our annual income might have even grown to 120. We got some raises.
Sure.
Hopefully.
Yep.
But the triangle's flipped, hasn't it?
It's going to tip over because that top is now heavier than the base.
The top now, assets, is now 150.
Yep.
And the base is now 120.
Right.
Now, over time, as Chad and I continue to invest, maybe now we rent out our original house.
Yep.
And we buy a second one. And then we put more money in our retirement.
Yep.
We could look up in a very short amount of time and the value of our assets are $500,000 or $1 million.
Right.
And our income has probably only grown to 140 or 150.
Sure.
That is literally what flipping the triangle is.
Yeah, and that's why we're saying don't change the words or the numbers where they ranked. It's just the image is going to flip because now the bigger number is the assets at the top, which has become the upside down inverted pyramid for us.
If this idea of flipping the triangle is a little bit overwhelming or makes you feel weird about your current financial situation, don't worry. I'm probably doing a crappy job of explaining it. You actually might be making really good progress without even realizing it. Every time we put money into our retirement account or we pay down our mortgage or we pay down our debt or we save a little bit more, we're growing our assets and we're increasing our potential future income. One day in the future, we're not going to have to rely on normal income. We're going to be able to rely on our assets, our retirement accounts, our rental properties, and so on. All this takes, Bob, is one simple decision to prioritize assets that produce income, and then we can change our financial future. We got to take a couple steps in retirement planning to make that happen.
Now, you're talking retirement planning. Ben, I want to give you some statistics about retirement, if that's okay. Jump in here. In the last 20 years, the average retirement age has actually gone up by 3 years. And now the average retirement age is 65 for men and 62 for women. That's the average retirement age. Okay. On average, a retiree is spending $4,300 out of pocket just for healthcare every year. Okay. So be prepared for that as you're working your numbers. And this one I thought was fascinating. 36% of Americans currently believe they'll just never get to retire. 36% of Americans believe they will never get to retire, and 60% of Americans expect Social Security as their main source of retirement income. That's some of the stats going on right now in the world of retirement, which is why we all need to take the bull by the horns here and get this triangle flipping as quickly as we can so that we are in a position to comfortably be able to retire.
So true. By the end of this episode, you are going to go from feeling like retirement was hopeless, you don't have a plan, to truly feeling like it's actually possible. That's my goal. If we don't do that, find a different podcast, a different wealth series, find somebody else. We're idiots. We failed. We apologize. We'll give your money back. We'll give you double the amount you paid for this course.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Now, if you ask Nita, she will tell you whatever the percentage is, that she's 100% sure I will never retire. And that's because she's told me I'm not allowed to. She just
No.
doesn't want me home that much.
She doesn't want you to spend all day with her.
Right. That's the thing, right? So some of us won't retire only because our partners have said, no.
We'll just continue to podcast forever.
Okay.
Till nobody listens. The last listener dies, then we stop.
They win.
Yeah.
Let us know when that happens so we can stop. Keep going, Ben. Let's talk some retirement for the audience.
If you're to go talk to a financial advisor or read financial advising books, here's what they're going to tell you. You're going to need roughly 70% of your pre-retirement income to live a comfortable life.
What does that mean, Ben?
Meaning, if you made $100,000 prior to retirement,
Okay.
you're going to need roughly $70,000 a year to retire.
Interesting. Okay.
So if you live on $200,000, you're going to need $140,000.
Okay.
Live on $300,000, $210,000. You live on $60,000, whatever that math is.
Sure.
Right?
Numbers are getting too big too quick for us here
You
on that.
following me?
Yeah. Live on less now so that number doesn't have to be as high later.
So in your retirement planning workbook, the very first question we want you to ask yourself is roughly, what do you think you could live on annually when you retire?
Okay. Using that number, that 70% would be a great guide.
Take an imagination of how you're living now.
Yep.
Figure out roughly what you think that would be. Take 70% of it. That could be it.
Now, why do you say 70%? I mean, I know it's not just you. Others are going to tell us that number. Why isn't it 100%? What are some of the expenses going away so I don't need all that money? What's changing?
Well, a lot of things change. One, we just don't do as much as we get old. We aren't going out all the time. We aren't traveling all the time. There's a certain point in time where you're just actually not going on cruises and flying around the world and buying new cars. You just don't do that stuff.
Okay.
Next, there's a really good chance if you start planning now correctly that by the time you get to retirement, maybe your car's paid off and maybe your home's paid off or close to it. So your fixed expenses aren't as large.
Okay.
You aren't driving to work every day, so you don't have gas.
Right.
Right? Your kids are no longer relying on you, hopefully, for college or for food or that sort of thing. Right?
So that's where that 70% number comes in. Some of the expenses are going to go away.
And when you read financial planning books about retirement, here's the problem. The only thing they talk about is like a 401k or an IRA or a pension.
Sure.
That doesn't get most of us to the point where we actually could retire.
Okay.
Here's how we know that. There's something called the 4% rule. And over time, this 4% rule has been proven to be very accurate. People might tell you in today's world, it's a little off, but they're making an assumption that inflation is going to stay at 8%.
Right.
Most likely, Chad, it's going to fall back down to the close to 2% where it's held for the vast majority of history.
So this year or these 2 or 3 year window, maybe that 4% rule isn't true, yet overall it'll probably return. Just like you've been sharing numbers on past episodes of, the S&P has returned blank, yet it didn't do that every year. Some years it was bigger, some years it was lower. That's why this 4% rule will pay off over time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Bob, you ready to help us out with some math here?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So what the 4% rule says is, Chad, you can withdraw roughly 4%
Okay.
of your retirement account annually.
Yep.
And have that retirement account balance remain really unchanged for 30 years straight.
Okay.
Meaning your retirement would last for 30 years.
Right. So it would come down a little bit, yet by it also earning its other interests, I would end up being able to live on that for 30 more years.
Yeah.
Okay. So I better not retire too soon because I might run out of it.
So if we needed our money to last 30 years,
Yep.
and we knew that it would only last 30 years or close to that,
Okay.
if we retired at 60, when would we be broke?
91.
Hypothetically,
Right.
if
If nothing changed, if we weren't generating enough income above this, if we weren't replacing that money.
we didn't want to withdraw anything from above our principal too in our
Right.
retirement account, that as well.
If we didn't move in with our kids.
Yeah.
Payback.
Okay. So when you think about your annual income,
Okay.
let's use the $70,000 example,
Sure.
which is 70% of the $100,000 that we were living on prior to retirement.
Okay.
You would take 70,000, Bob,
Yep.
and you would divide that by
Right.
0.04.
4%. 0.04.
Yep.
Okay. How much money do I need, Bob?
You need $1,750,000.
If you were going to rely 100% on your 401k or your retirement account or your stock account
Yep.
and nothing else,
Yep.
you would need to have 1,750,000 in order to have and withdraw 70,000 a year for 30 years straight and maintain close to your principal.
Which means I need to really get working really fast if that's going to be my only way of doing this.
A lot of people might be looking up and say, I have nowhere close to
Right.
$1.75 million. That stresses me out.
Correct. I'm not getting there, Ben.
Okay. We could also do it in reverse. So, Bob, if we had 500,000 in our retirement account the day we retired,
Okay.
so Chad, you're how old?
50, maybe 51 by the time Dave drops this. The birthday's soon.
Okay. So let's assume that in 15 years you're going to have 500,000 in there.
Okay.
You would take 500,000 and multiply it by 0.04.
Bob, you helping me out over there?
20,000.
That means Chad could take 20,000 a year out of his retirement account
Okay.
to live on,
Yep.
and it would last
30
for
years.
30 years.
Okay. Problem is, I'm $50,000 short of that $70,000 income I want every year, Ben.
You're going to have to find that from somewhere else,
Oh, crap.
or you're going to have to wait, or you're going to have to find a way to have more than 500,000
Right.
in that account when you retire,
Are you still giving out personal loans?
for sure.
Okay.
You could use the compound interest calculator
Yep.
that we talked about in a previous episode to say, I need to save an extra $500,000 in 15 years, and I know I'm going to get a 10 or 11% return. You could go back and figure out very quickly how much extra you would have to put into a retirement account for 15 years to get there.
Right.
Couldn't you?
I absolutely could.
So Bob, if we added an extra 500,000 to his account, how much would he have annually to live on?
40,000 now.
40,000.
Okay. I'm almost there. I still need $30,000 though to hit that $70,000 number.
You sure do, don't you?
I sure do. So there's got to be other ways because you're saying I might not be able to fully retire upon my 401k and IRA and all those.
So what we want you to do by using your workbook, which is available at winmakegive.com/wealth.
Yep.
You can download the workbook and you can do some examples for the 4% rule. You're going to type in your annual income that you want to have when you retire. You're going to divide it by 0.04 and it'll tell you how much you need to have in retirement.
Okay.
You're also going to take the current amount you have in retirement, put it in the box, and multiply it by 0.04. And that's going to tell you if you had to retire tomorrow, what would that equal?
Oof.
You could do this in another way by saying, what do I think my retirement will be at when I retire?
Yep.
And multiply it by 0.04, and you would end up with that number. We give examples on the next page in the workbook to show you what a $10,000 desired annual retirement income would require, what a $300,000, what $1 million a year would require if you wanted to live off $1 million. It's quite a large number. These worksheets are going to help you understand that most likely your retirement goals are not going to be accomplished through just a 401k or a stock account.
Right. So we're not wanting anyone panicking at this point during the episode. We want you to understand, we realize that you're probably not going to be sitting there and saying, oh, I have enough in that account, I'll be okay.
Correct.
We got more coming to help you so we can get you to the finishing line of retirement.
In the United States,
Mhm.
and if you're in a different country, which a lot of our listeners are,
Sure.
they have some sort of government provided support for retirement.
Yes.
In the United States, we have something called Social Security.
Right.
Assuming that it's still around,
Yes.
Social Security will provide a fixed amount of money that you can withdraw or that they will pay you
Right.
based on the year you retire.
Yep.
Assuming that you've paid in enough over time, you can go to the socialsecurity.gov website and check for yourself.
We give you the link in the workbook. There's actually a link in that workbook to go over to there and do the estimate.
Yeah. For example, if you were to retire this year in 2022 at age 65, you would receive $3,345 per month until you pass.
Bob, how much is that a year?
It's 40,000. That gets you closer.
That gets me where I'm going, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
if you waited until 65. If you did it a little bit sooner, if you retired at age 62 this year anyway, the maximum benefit is $2,364. So if you did it earlier, Chad, the yearly would be 28,000, a little bit more than that. If you wait until 70 to retire, at least in 2022, the maximum benefit's $4,194, which would be about $50,000 a year if you could wait till age 70 to retire.
Okay, so part of that $70,000 in our original example here, I'm not going to have enough in my 401k IRA. I only had $20,000 we were looking at. But now what I can say is I'm also going to have, if I did 65, which you said in the middle there, I think was about $40,000 a year coming from that. So now I'm at $60,000 of the $70,000 I want to have.
By the way, those are the max benefits that we just gave you. There's some people, some lower income earners that have earned less income throughout their lifetime would have lower benefits.
Right. Depends what you've paid in.
Yeah,
as to
and you
where
can
your
actually
bracket is.
on that Social Security site, if you kind of go in there and claim your own Social Security number and set up your own account, it will show you in there what your benefits will be right now based on what you've paid in and what you've earned over your lifetime. And it'll show you, what would you get if you retire at 62, or what would it be at 65, or what would it be at 70?
Okay. So we've created a retirement worksheet for all of you to use to figure out how to reverse engineer retirement or to see where are you at now. So you could assume that Social Security is going to go up based on an inflation rate over time, and you could probably figure out what it would be in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years or whatever. But just for the simplicity, let's use today's numbers.
Okay.
And let's pick the year that you're going to retire. So on the top of the retirement worksheet, write the year you're going to retire. 65, 62, 70, whatever. Once you do that, you can put how much you're going to receive from Social Security monthly and annually on the top of the retirement worksheet. So Chad, for you, you're going to retire when?
65.
65, which gives you how much per month?
4,000, Bob? Bob's looking that number up for me again.
3345, and it ended up being right about 40,000 a year, but 3345 a month, retiring at age 65.
So Chad is going to go in there and he's going to write monthly 3345 next to Social Security.
Yep.
And annually 40,000 or whatever that exact amount is.
Right.
He's also going to go down to the next line where it says retirement account balance, and he's going to write his estimated balance at retirement, which in this make-believe scenario, we said 500,000.
Right.
So 500,000 would give him 20,000 a year.
Right.
Because we're going to take 500,000
At
times
4% rule.
0.04.
Yep.
And 20,000 a year divided by 12 is 1666. So you would write that in monthly,
Okay.
and then 20,000 in annual.
Got it.
If we stopped right at this moment, that is Chad's opportunity for retirement and really nothing else. But Chad might decide that he needs more than that. So what is he going to do? One item that you need to fill out in the retirement income worksheet is the amount of cash that you're going to have at retirement outside of your retirement and Social Security. So let's say Chad also, because he's a saver, has saved up $100,000 in cash. That $100,000 has to last Chad 30 years, which means he could only withdraw from his cash
4,000
annually.
annually. Correct. Yeah. So I mean, monthly, what is that? You know, that's nothing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's helping him a little bit, right? It's $333 a month, and when we add it to his Social Security of $3,345 and his
1,600 from my
1,600,
retirement
right?
account.
He's up to about $5,300, $5,344 or something.
Okay. And that's just not adding up to a ton. But what if instead Chad took 50,000 of his 100,000 and he bought a duplex, a rental property that cash flowed $1,000 a month?
I like that.
Yeah. All of a sudden, he's up over $6,000 a month now.
Now he has 12,000. And that's getting him right there, isn't it?
Yep.
Getting him close. If we're going back to the original scenario where Chad needed $7,000 a month to be, you know, at his 70%, like, yeah, he's right there.
Right.
Chad might also decide that even though he's retired, he might want to do some consulting or sell wood furniture or
write another book.
Have a small business or write a book. So he might be able to go down to the other income category and write. He's also going to generate 20 grand a year because he's just not going to sit home and watch Judge Judy. He's going to do something, right? So as you start adding these things up, my aha is that it's actually quite possible if you start making the right decisions between now and then. Like, for instance, Chad, who has plenty of time left before he retires, he might say that I'm going to buy one property every 2 years for the next 5 years.
Okay.
And his retirement strategy might be about real estate investing.
Yep.
And he's going to have the extra 401k and the Social Security to support him in addition, but he could potentially live off just that, couldn't he?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later on in the Wealth series when we talk about real estate investing. The goal of today's call is for you to feel optimistic that retirement is possible. Also, that the right approach to retirement is a diversified approach so that his income comes from a variety of places. He might be able to minimize the amount of money he needs to live on by doing things like paying off his house,
Right.
paying off his automobile, or buying a new one with cash right before he retires, prepaying for some medical by investing in an HSA.
Which you'll explain on an upcoming episode.
There are lots of ways to minimize the amount of money. He could move from his primary residence and live in a duplex or triplex
Right.
so that the tenants cover 100% of the cost or they provide more cash flow. Retirement's possible when you have a plan and you execute on it starting now.
You know, Ben, at the beginning of the episode, completely overwhelmed, right? Even though we went through this in the Wealth series, the original Wealth series, it's still one of those things. How many of us just don't want to look at it, right? Retirement, I'll get there one day, or I'm never gonna, or
All of a sudden, you wake up and you're 45.
yeah, I'll win the lottery before then. That's my retirement strategy, whatever it is. And one day we wake up and I'm over 50 now, right? And Bob, like you said, you're 45, all of a sudden, you know, you feel like, where did that all go? Okay. And at the beginning of the episode, it felt overwhelming because there's no way I would get enough money into that 401k IRA, barring something strange happening. Yet, by taking the time and creating a plan as we just walked through, it's actually quite easy to see how I can get to that point where I could have that $70,000 a year income still, controlling myself and being able to live with a lot less debt because I use the Wealth series to get me there.
In order to truly plan for retirement, you have to have done all the other lessons of the Wealth series. You have to understand compound interest.
Yes.
You have to have a reality check to know where are you at now financially. You got to know your net worth. You got to reduce your expenses and increase your income so you have excess to invest and get on track for this. But when you do it in the order that we're teaching, it actually feels really possible. And you can get really excited because you could have a great retirement. One of the things that we didn't even consider for Chad is Chad's married. And there's a really good chance that Chad's spouse is going to live 50 years longer than Chad. And she's going to contribute her Social Security
Right.
and her retirement.
Yep.
She was in the military. Maybe she has a military retirement, right?
Sure.
There's different things that can contribute. So Chad's household income actually might be way better because it's two contributing.
Correct.
Get ready for more in the Wealth series, but don't cheat yourself by not downloading the workbooks and doing these exercises. As Chad always says, inviting your friends,
Amen.
getting people to do this. Do this Wealth series with your spouse, your partner, your friends, your kids. Do it with a networking group or your church group. Get them together and let's make this a movement where people are saying finances, wealth is something I can control. It's no longer something for other people. Money is no longer something that happens to me. Money's something that I decided was going to be a positive thing for my life, not a stressor.
You know, Ben, you're absolutely right. And boy, when we were younger, who had these conversations with us? Sadly, nobody was having them with us. That's why you wanted to create the Wealth series and why we have the Wealth series 2.0. Folks, what if you talk to your kids that are old enough to really, even though they don't want to believe you, believe Ben? What if they're here listening along? What if they participated and just started to put some money away and that compound retirement could become almost nothing to them because they have all the time in the world still ahead of them and not be like Bob and I who look up and say, we're how old all of a sudden? Oh my gosh, we're late. Okay? Bring those people along, share the episodes. Don't forget, if you are new to the Win, Make, Give podcast, come join us in our Facebook group where we continue the conversations after the episodes. And make sure you've subscribed to the Win, Make, Give podcast so it automatically shows up for you on a regular basis. Plus, we'd love a review and a ranking from you. Get in there and give that to us on whatever app you're listening to the podcast on. Until our next episode, we're going to continue to help you create wealth. And we want to remind you, as always, do good.